Ghosts appear in many forms. We can see them.
What was that?
We can hear them.
I am not afraid.
And sometimes we can even feel them. We've gone around the globe in search of the most terrifying spirits and supernatural beings who continue to live on long after their deaths. On World's Scariest Hauntings, anything can happen. Because you never know who's watching when the lights go out.
What the hell was that?
In this episode, a 12th century hotel where many of the guests have never left.
All these important events that have happened here, all the emotions that have been expressed here, somehow left its mark on the atmosphere of this place.
Murderers, thieves and smugglers have all trodden the floorboards in the medieval corridors.
We were on the route for the Hawkhurst gang, and it's actually written down that they would sit in our bar with the guns on the tables and no one dare say anything against them. Everyone was frightened of them.
Some guests at the Mermaid Inn refuse to ever check out.
He pulled my clothes and he tugged them quite hard, actually. I'm used to spirits. It's been around me all my life, but he was quite intimidating, even for me.
Rye in East Sussex is a quiet picture postcard town just 2 miles inland from the south coast of England. The cobbled streets of this historic tourist destination are lined with idyllic tea rooms and quaint B&Bs. But one medieval hotel stands out from the rest. The Mermaid Inn once played host to the notorious band of smugglers known as the Hawkhurst gang, and some 500 years later, paranormal enthusiasts believe the bootleggers still haunt the 12th century building. Judith Blincoe has owned the Mermaid Inn for the past 30 years and has learned to live with the supernatural beings inside.
It's quite funny because I can go into some buildings and all the hairs will stand up on the back of my neck and I feel quite spooked out, whereas if there's anything here, they've accepted me. I've been the only person here in the entire building when we closed for renovation. I never had a bad feeling. Sometimes I felt like someone was watching, but never a bad feeling.
Although Judith feels comfortable at the hotel, the guests staying here often have frightening experiences.
I came on duty on reception one morning and a couple from room 10 had woken up during the night, seen a figure walk through one wall out of another, came downstairs, slept on their couch and they refused to go back upstairs. So I had to go up, take all their clothes, bring them down. They got changed down here.
And it's not just room 10 that can leave couples terrified when they check out of the Mermaid Inn.
This is room number 1. When guests stay here, sometimes when they go to bed, they put their clothes on this chair, and in the morning, they discovered their clothes have moved to that chair. And they'll argue all the way to the car park with each other, you move the clothes, you move the clothes. It's so funny, it's always the same thing that happens in this room, same things people say, and these chairs are in fact the 3rd set of chairs we've put in this room. It doesn't matter what set of chairs, people have always seen the same thing happen.
Well, I would say that it's a mischievous spirit. If you're a trickster in real life, you can be a trickster in death. At the end of the day, it could be them just letting them know that they're there and not doing anything harmful, but just being playful.
Clearly there's some form of interaction taking place there between the physical world that we know and then something that is not of that physical world.
This could be attributed to a poltergeist or an intelligent spirit. So poltergeists are noisy spirits that are able to manipulate their surroundings and interact physically with their environment. So the movement of objects, movement of clothes, physically being touched by a spirit could all be attributed to a poltergeist.
We've had various mediums and sorts come around and they will say it's a poltergeist, or poltergeists, plural, but in that 2 people arguing. and maybe they, threw things, and that's how these clothes move.
Despite its quiet demeanour, Rye has a torrid past. Local historian and town sergeant Paul Goring knows more than most about traumatic events that shaped the area.
Rye has got a long history of being raided by the French. 2 or 3 times in history it's been raided. In 1377 was the worst raid. The French burnt the entire town down, apart from the church and the castle. They stole the church bells, carried them over to Normandy. 16 people died. So the following year, in retribution, a party of Rye fishermen went over to Normandy, seized back the same church bells and set the bells up as a watch bell against the future French invasions.
The Mermaid Inn was built in the 12th century on Middle Street. The road itself has since been renamed after the infamous hotel that stands upon it.
It was originally built in the 1150s. So you're looking at about 850 years. The original building was burnt down by French pirates in 1377. What's left was rebuilt in 1420. The building you're seeing now is roughly 1420 and a little bit of 16th century as well.
The place is actually made up of hundreds of little bits of buildings that were not totally charred, because the beams were from different eras, different ages, ship's timbers, all sorts of things all cobbled together.
One picture captured by a ghost hunter in the Mermaid Inn shows a ghostly reminder of its bloody past.
In the picture, there's a figure that seems to look like a Saxon soldier, possibly with the shape of a helmet covering the eyes. Historically, there was a period of time where there would have been Saxon soldiers in the town, or what is now currently the town. So it would be in keeping with the history of the town.
You can quite clearly see his features. That's quite an amazing find for somebody to have picture-wise, because it's not very often that you do picture people on photographs when you're not supposed to.
There is definitely something there. It's hard to tell exactly what. Perhaps she did capture one of the ghosts that haunts the Mermaid Inn.
At the end of the day, I do believe spirit can be captured, but there's no exact definition on what it is you're capturing or what makes it real, what proves it to be real, what disproves it. So it's very up to opinion. So I would say things like that definitely get me excited, because it shows you that there are unexplainable things out there.
The Mermaid Inn has been welcoming guests for nearly 100 years. It's no surprise that out of the tens of thousands of visitors, some remain in the historic rooms long after checking out.
All these emotions that have been expressed here over the years, all these important people that visit here, they've all sort of permeated the atmosphere here, and I think can be picked up by people who are in tune with such things.
Charlotte Underwood is a medium and paranormal investigator who has first-hand experience with the spirits who still reside in the hotel.
There's a lot of unearthly souls here. There's a lot of people that haven't realised they've passed. Some do realise and want to stay here because it's what they knew, and some can't go because they're trapped. And it's things that happened to them when they were living that stop them passing over. Some of them do want to interact with you, some of them don't. It's an interesting place to come along and investigate.
In Charlotte's many visits to the Mermaid, she has made contact with some playful entities.
We encountered numerous spirit while we were here. There's quite a lot of children here, actually, young children. There are some that are from the Victorian times here. You can tell by what they're wearing. And one of the little boys, he's about 10. He goes around with a little ball and like a cup to catch the ball. He likes playing with that. And he kept throwing it to me, thinking that I could throw it back to him. Bless him.
I believe the place that they are in when they're officially crossed over into another time is a timeless place. It's a place without time. So I believe they're aware of us, but I don't know if they're fully aware of time.
Hotel owner Judith has also experienced the power of mediums contacting the spirits of children.
In room 15, called Dr. Sin's bedchamber, 5 members of staff, we all went in, we were total non-believers. It was all a load of old rubbish. We made sure no one went in there first. They couldn't trick us. The medium himself, he said, I will now call upon the spirit of, and it was the person that he acts for, to come inside me, and you will see my face change. And we all looked at him, and we all saw his face change into the spirit, and that was a real sort of deep, deep breathe-in moment. And by the time we left at sort of 2 in the morning, we really believed that what we'd seen, there was the spirit of a little girl with a dog. We all felt the dog. We all stood up and we actually felt the dog, and we all saw our hand disappear into sort of smoke. All 5 of us, and we all went in there not wanting to believe or anything, and it was all a load of hocus pocus, and it wasn't. It was so, so bizarre.
The Mermaid Inn is home to many spirits, but not all of them are innocent young children. The ghosts of a notorious gang of smugglers have been known to terrify guests at the medieval hotel for centuries. The Mermaid Inn is one of the most haunted hotels in Britain. The 12th century building, famous for its eclectic mix of guests, from criminals to royalty, is nestled in the historic town of Rye in East Sussex.
It was a sort of industrial hub for the country, one of the 5 leading ports that were used frequently, and it was a very sort of popular area, lots of business and trade, and obviously a lot of ships coming and going. And it was also a very easy target for smugglers.
Back in the 1730s and 40s, which was the height of the smugglers' activities, Mermaid Inn was actually the main street in Rye, because back in those days, Rye was still a major port, and Mermaid Street was a street which led right down to the quayside. So the Mermaid Inn was in a very prominent position. It was a street that everybody passed when they came off the boats. It's played a very major part in Rye's history. Queen Elizabeth stayed here. William Shakespeare and his company actually produced a play here in the 1590s. So it's always been a very prosperous, very central part of Rye.
For 14 years, between 1735 and 1749, the Mermaid was a major hub for one of the most infamous bands of criminals in Britain, the Hawkhurst gang.
The Hawkhurst gang were a notorious gang of local smugglers. They were originally based in Hawkhurst in Kent, but Rye was one of their main bases, and particularly the Mermaid Inn. The leader of the gang was a chap called Arthur Gray, whose portrait is actually in the foyer here at the Mermaid Inn. His second in command was Thomas Kingsmill. They linked up with a chap called Jeremiah Curtis. He was rumoured to be the illegitimate son of the mayor of Rye, James Lamb.
And it's actually written down that they would sit in our bar with the guns on the tables and no one dare say anything against them. So they would just, in front of everyone, just sit there. And everyone was frightened of them.
Ready to challenge anybody who looked like they were taking interest in them. They were completely blatant about their activities here. The entire Hawkhurst gang would have gathered here. Many of them stayed here. Thomas Kingsmill's wife is supposed to haunt one of the rooms here, as also does one of the other smugglers' sweethearts. So there was a very strong connection between this place and the Hawkhurst gang.
As I understand it, there were a series of tunnels that were built underneath the inn in order to help them escape and evade capture, and ferry their stolen goods up from the coast into the town.
One time, the people of Rye were very much in favour of the smugglers because everybody in the town benefited, but once they linked up with the Curtis gang, they got so vicious they actually revolted the local people, and people started to be willing to inform on them and so forth. Nowadays, we tend to view smuggling as something quite sort of romantic and 4 and 20 ponies trotting through the dark sort of thing. But the Hawkhurst gang were very, very vicious. They were utter thugs. People that cheated on them or spoke out about their activities were tortured, quite often murdered. There were tales of people in Rye being crucified against their own front doors by the Hawkhurst gang.
The gang's main trade was smuggling tea. They ran the south coast by intimidating locals through brute force and fear.
A chap called James Marshall, who took too much of an interest in their activities outside this inn, disappeared, was never seen again. They killed a chap called Richard Hawkins for allegedly stealing some of their tea, then found out afterwards they simply miscounted the amount of tea they had. But they were a very, very vicious gang of smugglers.
Medium Charlotte Underwood is certain that she contacted one of these mean-spirited smugglers when she attended a séance down in the cellar of the Mermaid Inn.
There was 4 of us down there, and we basically were just stood in a circle. There was another medium that was present on the evening, and I allowed her to open. And a gentleman named John stepped in. I could hear him initially speaking about tobacco and rum. And he said, "Where are the barrels? Where are the barrels?" And he kept looking, turning to see if the barrels were coming. So I don't know if there used to be an opening in the cellar where they could transport them, but that's what he said he used to smuggle in.
The cellars here still date back to the time of the original inn, 1156, and there are allegedly tunnels which run from these cellars right across Rye to various places in Rye. In particular, they go to the old Bell in the High Street. There was actually a revolving cupboard in the old Bell at the top of the tunnel, so smugglers could disappear from the Mermaid Inn and reappear in the Bell Inn just by twisting a cupboard round it. From what I understand, the entrances to some of these tunnels still exist, although the tunnels themselves are blocked up, can no longer be used.
John, the smuggler that Charlotte had contacted in the cellar, turned violent towards the group.
Not the nicest character in the world. He pulled my clothes and he tugged them quite hard, actually. He did also put his arms around one lady, but he was speaking to her and I could hear him as well, and he was, for want of a better word, swearing. And he didn't like the fact that there were ladies down there.
My beliefs are that spirits manifest in different realms, so you will have negative energies who tend to be on a lower level, but they will obviously harbour in certain rooms or certain areas. But you will also find that there are nice spirits within a property as well. It's like the good and evil duel sort of thing.
I'm used to spirit now. It's been around me all my life, but he was quite intimidating even for me. So yeah, we cut it short.
Room 17 of the Mermaid Inn is said to have been the preferred quarters of one of the Hawkhurst gang's leaders, Thomas Kingsmill.
We actually stayed in room 17, myself and 2 other ladies, and we experienced the door being slammed shut for no reason. There was no draft. There's a couple of nasty characters that walk the halls, really. They walk down the corridors, especially in room 17. They can be quite unpleasant. So anyone who is coming here, just watch out for them. You do tend to smell a cigar smell as you're walking around, and that's linked to one of them.
The Mermaid's head porter, Glenn Bailey, remembers his first paranormal encounter in room 17.
I was asked to take some champagne, etc., up to the room like we do, and as I took it up there, I put it on the table, which is like right in front of you. And as I was still just in there, make it all nice and tidy. And as I made it nice and tidy, someone just pulled me around sort of thing, as if to say, look, don't see what I was doing sort of thing.
Since then, Glenn has become fascinated with room 17 and often tries to capture the spirit of Thomas Kingsmill on camera.
This is my favourite room. This is most things that happen to me in this room, and not just to me, to guests and people who come and visited here for maybe just a lunch, and I brought them up here. I've given them paper to read. So this is the room 17, the Kingsmill. This is where I actually had the video footage of where I was sitting on the bed, which is just here. And this is where obviously the chair was, and this is where I saw the person, the figure, or whatever you want to call it, standing right here. I was like egging it on and calling it, and as I turned around and said to him, I can see you, you're standing by the picture. Come on, you're by the chair, I can see you. You saw 2 orbs come up, and then obviously it was coming closer, and I was egging it on, come on. And as it got closer to me, you see an orb come up here, and my phone was knocked over down in my hand.
An orb is believed to be some sort of form of residual energy left over from the dead or a dead person, but it presents as a spot of light rather than the whole human form.
It's quite common that when spirits are present, they draw energy from the environment, but they can also draw energy from an individual. And some people are more susceptible than others. So when these spirits are present, they can often make you physically feel a sensation of sickness, dizziness, or that kind of feeling of the hair standing up at the back of your neck. So they can interact with us physically as well as emotionally, and sometimes on a psychological basis as well.
Glenn is certain that he was shoved to the ground by a brutish smuggler who was executed over 250 years ago.
I personally think it was Kingsmill. He was obviously one of the people who's in charge of the Hawkhurst gang. And this is the bed, which I was telling you about, where the people always sit on this side, where they've had their legs pulled or been pulled at the bed, and this is the where people said that where things have happened in here.
And it's not just Glenn who has experienced the strange occurrences in the room.
I walked in there once showing some people around and the ceiling fell down right in front of me. And I've never had that ever in the 34 years I've been here. That was a bit embarrassing.
There's one item of furniture in the Kingsmill room that particularly terrifies visitors.
One of the hauntings that's been reported at the Mermaid Inn is a rocking chair that guests reported seeing sort of moving back and forth. They'd wake up in the middle of the night and it would be rocking.
And so we're talking about a good 30 years ago, the chambermaids used to only go in twos because the room would suddenly go cold for no reason and the rocking chair would rock.
And it's got to a stage where the Mermaid Inn routinely take the rocking chair out of the room, but guests who stay there who want to see it can ask to have it put back in the room so they can experience this.
This is the rocking chair. The rocking chair only goes in here when people ask it to go in, because it does all different sort of things. It rocks and people have sat inside there. There's so many orbs going around them. They've got hot, cold, all sorts of things.
But what sort of spirit could be responsible for the rocking chair's mysterious movements?
The rocking chair would have to be moved or pushed by spirit with a substantial amount of energy to be able to move it. So I guess it would be spirit trying to let you know that they're there. Maybe that's a room, that's their room, you know, and they are aware of us. I would call that an intelligent haunting then. Scary if you're just laying in bed and all of a sudden the rocking chair starts to move.
The physics-defying chair both excites and scares Glenn in equal measure.
For some unknown reason, I don't know why, but I've never ever sat in this chair, and I've told people, they've asked you why, so I don't know, I just don't really want to do it, sort of thing.
Many people fear the unknown, and with so much supernatural energy inside the Mermaid Inn, it's no wonder some people are too scared to spend the night here. The Mermaid Inn is one of the world's most haunted hotels. Ghosts reside in the rooms of Rye's historic medieval building, and the stories of these spirits have become folklore.
The idea of the haunted building is very popular in the kind of stories of hauntings in general, because there's this sort of feeling that if something terrible had happened inside, the building in a way incubates that event and it continues to exist somehow, locked inside the building. And we, of course, will always associate that space with the terrible things that have happened inside.
The Mermaid Inn will forever be linked with the illicit activity of smuggling. One person who was killed at the hands of the notorious Hawkhurst gang is still known to roam the corridors to this day.
Another reported sighting of a ghost at the Mermaid Inn is that of a maid that's been seen moving around the rooms. And it's thought that she was a girlfriend of one of the smugglers who frequented the Mermaid Inn back in the 18th century.
But unfortunately, she gossiped a little bit too much about their activity, so they ended up cutting out her tongue and then killing her. But she still haunts rooms 1 and 5, trying to find her smuggler lover.
The hotel's owner, Judith Blinko, knows all too well about the spectral lady in white.
So we're in one of the oldest sections of the hotel. I came along here thinking about something completely different. So we're standing outside room 1. There was a lady walking along here, long flowy hair, long flowy dress. And I turned around and she'd gone. And there was nowhere she could have gone. There were no rooms let in that section. There's a door at the far end that makes quite a creaky noise, and she'd have had to be the speediest of all runners to have got through there without me knowing where she'd gone. So many people have seen this lady that's just then vanished.
The maid is seen different places, different times. So I would say she's more of an intelligent haunting. I just think she's become familiar with the people that are, running the Mermaid Inn, that she feels comfortable enough to show herself, because spirit will also do that. If they feel comfortable with you, it's easier to communicate. Or if it's somebody that, looks similar to somebody that they loved, they're easier to come to you because of that familiarity.
The murdered chambermaid is one of the most documented ghosts at the Mermaid.
The whole time I've been working here, when we first bought the hotel 25 years ago, I went to the local library, got quite a few stories, and there was a story which was of the turn of the century, which was where a couple saw a spirit in one of the rooms, and that was of a lady as well. So all these stories keep creeping up.
I think somebody, when they've had their life cut short when it wasn't supposed to, I think they do actually stay where they are. They're earthbound, basically. But that's because they weren't ready to leave. They usually find it hard to move on. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that she still remains within the inn. Obviously, her life was cut short by means not of her own hand, and obviously not of natural causes. So that would lead me to believe that's the reason why she stays.
Being murdered, being taken, again, that creates an imprint on the space that also could make her feel held there, or maybe somebody's keeping her there, or she was taken too soon. She might be confused. She might not know she's dead. There could be an array of different things, but I want to say because of the traumatic event that happened to her of being murdered, that's why she stays. She's got some stuff she's got to work out before she can cross over.
Although the focal point of paranormal activity in the area, the Mermaid Inn is not the only mysterious place in the southeast coast town of Rye.
There are supposed to be 72 active ghosts within the centre of Rye. It's a very haunted town, possibly because the town has hardly changed since the 18th century. The port declined rapidly from the middle of the 18th century, and from that point onwards there's no money to build new buildings in the town. And so much of what you see today is Rye in the 18th century, and as a result of that, many of its former residents are still living here, still visiting the place.
One such spirit is that of John Butcher Breeds, an infamous murderer from 1742 who is part of the local folklore.
He attempted to murder the mayor of Rye. Mistaken identity, he murdered the deputy mayor by mistake. He was caught, but the mayor was actually his judge. He ordered him to be hanged, and then his body was kept in a gibbet cage in the marsh for over 50 years, until all that's left of it was the top of his skull, which is still kept in the attic of the town hall to this day. And he is seen in the churchyard. People walk through the churchyard night have actually seen John Breeds lurking, ready to strike his fatal blow. Somebody who did the ghost walk about 2 years ago, as they passed the spot where John Breeds appeared, they felt a sudden awful blow in their ribs. And it frightened them so much, they actually came down to Heritage Centre the next morning and said, "John Breeds punched me."
Being attacked by a spirit or an unseen force is not common at all. However, the more you put yourself into a position where you are in the vicinity of spirits, the likelihood of you being physically assaulted or touched is quite high. And myself and my experiences, I have been physically assaulted. Recently, I was punched in the face by a spirit. And this was something I caught on a camera, using an SLS camera. I mapped a figure that was seemingly stood in front of me. I asked it to step forward, and then bang, it felt like a rush of cold air hitting me straight in the face. It knocked me over.
He's here, he's here, he's here.
I've got him stood in front of me. He's right in front of me, guys. I'm mapping him now. I'm recording.
Yeah.
Oh!
Oh, you're okay.
I've been hit in the face. It's something that clearly scares you. It shakes you to your core. But as an investigator, you get back up, you try to carry on and act professionally. It's very difficult.
Another of the haunted rooms at the Mermaid Inn is room 16, also known as the Elizabethan bedchamber.
People who stayed there have reported waking up in the night to find a duel being fought in the room. Two guys, Tudor clothing, with swords, fighting each other After a few seconds, one of the guys kills the other guy and throws it down a secret passage, which does actually exist, behind Elizabeth's room before they disappear. The passage originally led into the bar and would have come out above the bar area, and people working behind the bar have actually seen all the bottles and glasses jump off the bar, exactly as if a body had been thrown onto them.
Regular guest Kiki Kendrick has been visiting the Mermaid Inn for the past 25 years.
I think we've stayed in virtually every room, but we always, when we go at Christmas for our anniversary, because I got married there, we always stay in the same room, the Elizabethan chamber, with the four-poster bed.
Kiki is one of the lucky people to have witnessed the ghostly duel when she and her partner were awoken in the dead of night.
Robin and I both sat bolt upright, and we heard a commotion in the corner and everything was freezing cold. And I remember it was all this like clashing of knives, and it was a bit sort of misty and slightly out of focus, but we could tell something was in the corner. It sounded like a fight. We figured, well, afterwards, the next day when we were talking, that somebody must have had a fight and one killed the other, because then we heard this, ah! As if they'd fallen down, and then it was silent, but deathly silent, and still stony cold. It was like I was in another time. And I think it was because it was stony cold. We both said it was like we were in a time warp.
This kind of phenomena is simply amazing. Imagine waking up to see two people sword fighting in a bedroom and then disappearing out of view. The simple fact that these two spirits are fighting and are oblivious to their surroundings and to the people that are observing them indicates that they are residual in nature. They're not intelligent, they're almost being played back like an echo of the past.
Experts believe there is a scientific theory behind the ghostly projections.
Stone tape theory was an idea that became popular in the mid-20th century, and it's this notion that materials can withhold events, much like a tape would retain, audio. So as sort of time goes by, these events are played out again, much like you're playing back a tape.
Because they are projections of their environment, residual hauntings can regularly be seen.
We would probably say that if it happens, more than once a year or anything like that, it is a common occurrence. Usually on battlefields, anything like that holds residual energy, you'll probably see it on once a year when that battle actually took place. You'd hear the clanging of the swords, you would hear them shouting, you'd actually probably see them, but you wouldn't be able to interact with them. You probably wouldn't want to walk through them because most people are actually scared, or the brain actually doesn't recognise that what they're actually seeing is real. However, it's very real, and you probably could walk straight through them and they wouldn't even know that you were there.
The dueling swordsman had a profound effect on Kiki. It's something she'll never forget.
It's usually one person seeing something, but we both saw it, and we both saw it, felt it, heard it. It was quite scary. If I'd been on my own, I think I probably would have been even more scared.
With nearly 1,000 years of history, it's no surprise that spirits within the Mermaid Inn continue to terrify and intrigue guests to this day. The Mermaid Inn is a 31-room hotel in Rye on the south coast of England that's full of history. If you look up at the ceilings, you'll see how owners, new and old, have tried to protect the building from evil for hundreds of years.
A funny early Victorian custom, this part of England was quite heavily into white witchcraft. So every room downstairs at the Mermaid has got a witch's ball on the ceiling. And the idea is if a witch walked past the window and put an evil spell on the room, it reflects back on her, so it brings you good luck, it wards off evil spirits. And that's one of the reasons we put balls on a Christmas tree, to ward off evil spirits, bring us good luck.
Many people that believe they live in a haunted home often have certain idiosyncrasies or rituals that they do, and it's a way of either protecting themselves or protecting those that are in the property and appeasing the spirits to some extent. And some of these rituals are things like placing a certain object in an area of the house and not moving it, or not allowing people to touch it, or putting salt around door frames or windows, using crucifixes, holy water, all of these kind of things to almost ritualise the fact that they're living in a haunted property and they don't want anything to attack them.
There are other balls of light that have been captured on camera in the hotel, but these ones aren't attached to the ceilings.
In the paranormal community, orbs are considered to be a kind of manifestation of some sort of movement of energy, of an entity, of something that we can't see with the naked eye, but can sometimes be captured in photography.
So these spirits are drawing energy from the ambient environment, and they're trying to show themselves as light forms, and these often appear as balls of light, and they can be picked up on cameras or be seen with the naked eye.
This photo, taken by a tourist, shows an orb floating around the halls of the Mermaid.
It's claimed that in this picture there is an orb. You can see the sort of fine bit of light in the centre of the corridor, and then just behind to the back there's also what looks like the outline of a figure.
I say that it's an orb because it appears very, very bright. Usually dust and stuff like that will rise up and you'll see a lot of it, not just one. So that's what makes me believe that it's an orb. And then there's a white, sort of wispy figure in the back, far away. I believe that's how spirit manifests and forms, and whether it's a wisp, whether it's a shadow, whether it's an orb. So I definitely think that there was energy captured there.
The Mermaid has a huge history. It's come through stages of, years and years and years of harrowing events, such as murders, fights and things like that. So a bit like the stone tape theory again, where energy is housed within the building. However, there are some intelligent beings within the Mermaid that would potentially be the subject of a full-bodied apparition. Now, if that's the case, then the light anomalies could well be the first stage of a manifestation.
You go in as an investigator to disprove everything that is being said, to find a rational explanation, and that is where we've very much come up with the unexplainable things that we say are paranormal, because there's no way to explain that. Like, how did that light glitch get in there? Some would say a camera flare. But if you were there and you saw that there was nothing there and nothing's wrong with your camera, your best ghost hunting tool is your body and what you're seeing and what you're feeling when you're there. And you'll be able to figure it out from that point. But definitely you gotta disprove it, and then it becomes supernatural, unexplainable.
High up in the eaves of the Mermaid Inn is room number 5. Medium Charlotte Underwood has had many supernatural experiences in this extraordinary room, including making contact with a French woman.
She came to me. She was actually speaking French, but I understand it as English. And she was crying, and she explained that she was lost. And I questioned her. I asked her why are you lost, and she described a child. And it turned out that she'd actually lost a child. So she'd given birth to a child and lost it in that room. And she was held captive by one of the smuggling gang.
Fascinated, Charlotte held a séance in room number 5, using a special tool to try and make contact with any spirits trapped there.
The angel board is basically similar to a Ouija board, but it's protected a little bit more. There's a prayer on the underside of the board. As we were going along, this little person popped in at the side of me. Rather than a person, I should say entity, but to me, they're like people. And he, a little boy, can't have been more than 7 or 8. And he had blonde hair, and he just looked so beautiful. The colour around him was yellows, it was golds, it was so bright. And he just popped his head in, and he looked round like this, and then in that time he'd gone. So it was very, very quick, but it gave me a sense of peace, actually. It was lovely.
Angel boards, spirit boards, anything like that, you're opening a portal to the other side. What you actually get out of that, regardless of whether it's an angel board or a spirit board, is down to what you invite in. With a spirit board, you usually have a glass that's turned upside down. This could be also classed as glass divination. Now, what usually happens is that the energy flows through the finger of every single person that's there and actually generates enough energy that spirit can communicate with us through the board.
It's said that our energies are interacting with the spirit world, and this board itself is opening up a portal to the other side. So there's a way of communicating with these spirits intelligently to some extent. However, spirit boards are often perceived as being very, very dangerous, and they do need to be used with caution. It's not a game, and you do in fact open up a doorway to the other side.
Spirit boards, also known as Ouija boards, can be dangerous if used incorrectly.
One of the things that people worry about often when they're using spirit boards, either at home or with friends, is that they fear the idea that they might have brought something into the world, a darker force that might be threatening them.
People are automatically afraid of it because they don't know what to expect. So fear alone is an energy that is quite forceful, and especially if you've got 4 or 5 people around a spirit board who are quite fearful, it warrants quite a lot of energy. They could potentially have enough collective energy that they can summon something that's quite powerful.
People don't properly protect themselves, so you're walking away from a Ouija board, but you just opened up a line of communication. You just opened a door to the other side, and you didn't close that. That's just like you leaving your house door open, and the mice can get in, a squirrel can come in. You don't know who's coming through the front door if you leave it open.
The Mermaid Inn fascinates and excites tourists and ghost hunters from around the world, all hoping to catch a glimpse of one of the many spirits who continue to reside in the 12th century hotel.
It's a very, very old building. It's got a very, very long history. They are 850 years of there being a building on this spot, and the existing building has been here, sort of 600-700 years. And of course, then you've got the smuggling connection, which was very dangerous, very edgy, but also a little bit romantic as well. And so you've got all these associations, all of which have left their mark on the structure of this building. All these important events that have happened here, all the emotions that have been expressed here, all of which has sort of left its mark on the atmosphere of this place.
I would say it's exciting for a paranormal investigator to go there because of all of the activity. A lot of places that have such vast history and have so much attached to it. I mean, just saying murder and mystery alone. You're going in there and you know you're going to come into contact with something supernatural. Spirit doesn't just go on command. So you're going to a haunted location with so many different kinds of spirits, so many different kinds of energies. You're walking in there as an investigator knowing that you're going to come up with some kind of evidence or experience something, and that is exciting.
It's definitely one of the most active places that I've been to, if not the most active. I would say it is one of the most haunted places in the world.
Judith still hopes that one day she'll find something special at the Mermaid Inn, a bounty left behind by the Hawkhurst gang.
My most important thing is I know somewhere here is buried a huge treasure chest, and it's full of pieces of 8 and gold doubloons, and they're mine, and I will, before I die, find them here. And hopefully maybe a spirit here that'll tell me where they are.